Hi, I'm Courtney Picou. Thank you for joining us. This is the Reconnection Blueprints Show Summit, where we talk about letting go of limitations, hearing God's voice, and embracing empowered living. Thank you so much.
Well, my pleasure. Tell me more about this summit that you're doing.
I was actually reviewing what you sent me, and I'm looking at your book that you wrote, and I'm like, wait a minute. This is like total in alignment with me, and it wasn't even like purposeful because I follow you on Facebook. I keep up with your Instagram and your beautiful poetry. I know Betz. I'm like, I would love to get her on because I utilize a lot of your tools, especially like the 7 levels of consciousness, but understanding what you taught us about the brain and everything. Like, it's just really helped me as a coach to be a better coach with the people that come in for me. So this was all about like, okay, the biggest problem that we have is we're so disconnected with ourselves because we're disconnected with God. And that was something whenever I was looking through your book, the book Integration, the Power of Being Coactive in Work and Life, like you approach the spiritual and the historical disconnection and what it's cost us. How many of us are not fulfilling our calling in life because we're not connected with ourselves because of everything that's going on up here?
Right. And, and I think, 2 things about that. One is that as one of my clients that I was just on with was saying to me that she saw this quote saying, the world is full of people doing things that they are less qualified to do than you are just because they believed in themselves, which is so good and so right. And the other thing is that I've spent a lot of time, I've been doing a lot of research, and it's taken me to YouTube, and I've spent a lot of time watching YouTube this year, like a lot of time because of a particular area of research. And what I love about it is some of the best people, the most credible, the most interesting, have the lowest tech. They just get their camera on and they talk, and it's because of their personality and because of their passion for the subject. They're amazing. It's taught me a lot about just go for it. So I think you're right.
Okay, well, what I'll say is that you have a lot of glorious credentials. But the thing that I love the most is that you're the co-founder of Be Above Leadership. And what's great about that, that's actually my word for the year, to lead. And I get to raise my level of leadership. And part of it is just jumping in and doing some things and just trusting the Holy Spirit and just going with it. But you're also an international speaker. Now that I did know, I knew that you traveled. So it's always like fun. Maybe you can speak a little bit to that. And let's see. I know that you have been certified for quite some time. And I really hope that we get a little bit of time, because in your 15 years of experience, like some of the things that you've just noticed about the changing and like is changing with people. So now what I wasn't sure about, but I do see that you have this book. Now, did that just recently get published?
No, I think that was 2012 that I did that. And I was still working for a coaching school at the time. And it's really a book that looks at their model, but I think addresses some bigger themes about how we work with ourselves and each other. And so I think it's kind of bigger than just the coaching model that it talks about.
Okay. Now, I know that you really focus in on neuroscience and studying of the brain. And I know that from my own experience when we did the workshop that you came in to teach us. I'm a total brain nerd. I was just reading a book the other day. It's actually about the Ho'oponopono, but he's talking about quantum physics and energy that we create. I'm like, oh my God, I'm totally nerding out right now. And so all this stuff, I'm not a brain scientist or anything remotely close to it, but all this stuff fascinates me. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to provide this stage for you to talk about what you want to talk about. I mean, obviously it's about connecting like ourselves, which our brain is a part of it, and just reconnecting with ourselves and, like thoughts and God. In your research and in your studies of everything that you've done, like how much has played into how much our mind like holds us back and keeps us disconnected.
It's such a good question. I mean, and I always think about things on so many layers. Um, and one of the reasons that I really got interested in neuroscience was because I'm interested in spirituality. And so just sort of big picture first, and then I want to answer your question. But the sort of the big picture for that is there were so many people that would turn their back to spirituality of any kind, whatever religion you are, but any belief that there's any sort of energy that's bigger than just us, that would turn their back on that because they couldn't understand it. You know, it didn't seem logical to them. You know, faith is not necessarily logical. But I saw that was holding them back from being really effective in life. That the more that we open our hearts to each other, which I believe is part of the spiritual process, and to whatever it is that is bigger and more powerful than our human experience. And for me, I hold that very, very open. I work with people from lots of different backgrounds, and we find such commonality in all of it. That if you can't connect with that, and if you can't connect with other, and if you can't connect with yourself, you're very limited in what you're able to actually create in the world. So that's kind of what brought me in, is to say, can I provide something for people who are really skeptical? Can I show them that they are operating, their brain is going to operate in a different way if they come from a place that is kind of mean, honestly,
Right.
and not, at all concerned with other people, concerned with our neighbors, concerned with, our community, anything like that. Like, what happens when you have that kind of brain? Because it's going to also have impacts on business and every other area of life. I want to get to a state of overall coherence or sort of harmony in my being. Because the more harmony I come to, and I'm going to give you a concrete example, the more harmony I come to hear, the more open I am to whatever it is that God, whatever you want to call angels, Christ, any other energy can then fill me with. If I am not in harmony here, I cannot be filled by anything else. Or if it may be trying to fill me, but I'm not listening, right? It's like,
right.
There's an old story of the rabbi. So it's a Jewish story. And the rabbi says, God, why don't you talk to me? And God's like, I'm talking to you, but you're not listening. And I think sometimes we're not listening to the endless beautiful conversation that's available because of our own systems are too under fear, worry, stress, our own concern. So one of the things that I know about the brain is that the stronger we get in terms of our ability to kind of look at ourselves, to stand back a little bit and kind of look at ourselves and say, oh, I might have a fear, for example, around being good enough. Most people do.
Mm-hmm.
It's the most common fear. On some level, it all comes down to, am I good enough, right? So they have that fear. And the louder, if I can stand back a little bit and go, okay, I am having this very human response to a new experience or to, a new person. And that conversation is coming up. Am I good enough? Can I stand back and say, where did that come from? Where else in my life does that play out?
Mm.
Is that necessarily true? What other evidence do I have? And kind of take this little bit of a separate view. And literally what you're doing is you're strengthening neural connections in your brain from your more objective parts of your brain to the more emotional parts. And the stronger those connections are, the more that we can watch like our own experience and our own fear, be curious about it and not have it derail us. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, that makes total sense, especially when you said the connection of the emotion to the objective, like the stronger that is, like that makes so much sense to where we don't have that 210 reaction. almost.
Exactly. And
Not
I
too
think
much.
also some people are so objective, they've been so rewarded for just being logical and objective. Emotions are information. They're part of how we're processing the energy within us and the energy around us. So they need to, some of my clients need a little more help at sort of saying, okay, let's be a little objective about this fear that you have right now, for example, that you're not good enough, you know, because that might get in the way of something you have to contribute to the world. Maybe you have a really important message for the world. And if you're afraid of being judged, you will not do it,
Right.
right? Now, some others of my clients need to actually start listening more carefully to the emotions that they're feeling and the emotions other people are feeling, because those are just as real and just as important. And they're information about what is happening. And if we ignore them, sometimes we end up in really bad situations, I have to say. So it goes both ways.
So do you mean like, are you kind of referring to that what we think about it kind of, or what we worry about, uh, kind of like Job, when Job says, what I fear has come upon me? Like, we think about, like, we create that in our brain, and that's kind of
Yeah.
what brings forth. Yeah, because that's
Right. And I think there's this really interesting place of saying, you know, part of my research in the past year has been honestly about darkness. It's been about like, what is, you know, what's happening with sort of darkness in the world. And we live in a time where we have some examples of people that, you know, especially those people who pretend to be light, but really are not doing very good stuff, you know, behind closed doors. You know, what is that about? And one of the things I think a sophisticated one of the things that I'm working on, let me put it that way, that I believe is really important at a certain level of spiritual awareness is to have our eyes open. And maybe you can think of a Bible, you know, like story about this, because it's to say, I don't want to just live my life in fear. What I worried about has come upon me. I don't want to create, you know, demons and problems when maybe I should have given it a try, right? I want to have
Mhm.
faith and confidence. And then I also want to, you know, say, if I can't find my way, then God will help me find a way, right?
Right.
At the same time, I don't want to look at someone who is here to bring darkness of some kind. Maybe they're just not a good person. I don't know why in this lifetime they're not. I don't want to look at that person and allow them to continue that behavior. I may want to forgive them at the highest spiritual level. But on the human level, we need to do something about that. It is not okay to hit your wife. It is not
Right.
okay, right? It is not okay to abuse people. It is not okay to steal from people. It is not okay. And so sometimes our more emotional brain, our rational brain may be saying, you know, Jesus says to forgive. But our emotional brain is saying, I don't want that person anywhere near me. That is scary. He is
Mhm.
scary. She is scary. This doesn't feel good. This doesn't feel safe. And sometimes our rational brain says, but you should forgive them. We need to figure out how we integrate both of those. And we maybe need to just forgive at the highest spiritual level. Jesus threw the moneylenders out of the temple, right? You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
this is not like, I'm just going to forgive you, do whatever you want. This is like, no, that's not what this is for. This
Mhm.
needs to be a safe space of worship,
Right.
right?
He got
Now,
the
I'm sure
order.
he forgave them, but we have boundaries.
Right.
And often
Yeah.
what our emotional brain is doing is it's telling us what the boundaries should be. So,
That's good. That's good. Yeah, because I'm like, I'm playing out that story of Jesus overthrowing the anger because it was righteous anger.
that's the that's the listening to the righteous anger and saying, I am not going to be a force of destruction. I am not going to kill them, but I need to listen to something doesn't fit with my values. Something doesn't fit with what, you know, what we're doing here. Some part of me is telling me there's something to pay attention to. And I've noticed that a lot of spiritual people, myself included, can sometimes go too far to the looking for the positive intent and
Right.
and everyone's a child of God. And yeah, that's true. And some children of God do really bad things that hurt people.
Right. Exactly. And that actually even speaks to uh whenever I was trying to even come up with the title of this show, because I really wanted to be breaking theology. I mean, like, where have we created some of our theology? And it was kind of like, yeah, that might be a little bit much. Some people are like, well, there's nothing wrong with my theology. I was like, I mean, whenever I rise in the morning, the first thing that I pray is like, okay, God, I'm like, break whatever kind of theology I have going on in my life today that's going to keep me from really seeing you. And, like, we, especially in America, we grew up in church. There's certain, I mean, how many times have we heard money doesn't grow on trees, or the idea that money is is the love of money, or money is the
Root of all evil, right?
Yeah, but that's not even what Jesus said. That's what gets spoken about. And then we all have this, okay, all people in church are supposed to be poor, martyrs, we're not supposed to have money because that's going to make us evil. But money's just a tool.
I always think we have to go a layer deeper, and that's what being Knight of True Faith, that comes from Soren Kierkegaard, who was a philosopher and theologian, and I think he called it being a Knight of True Faith. And it's like, I think what he would say is you have to wrestle with these things. You have to, really get in there and kind of unpack them. And I think that you're absolutely right. People translate as like money is the root of all evil, but it's really, I think it's the attachment to money. It's the problem is when money becomes the God, rather than money can be a way of serving God. And, a really interesting example, and not everybody might agree with this, but you were saying, I travel a lot, and I travel internationally. And I do things like I try to bring this work of the 7 levels of human effectiveness of consciousness to places like China. And it's not, I'm not bringing any particular religion, but it does have a spiritual, openness to it. And by the way, the Chinese people that I've worked with absolutely love it. So this is my work to keep trying to build a better world. Okay, so it's really awful to fly 20 hours in a plane. It is the worst thing I can possibly think of, and my back hurts, and I feel terrible, and I don't get food that I can eat, and my digestion is all up. So one of the things that my partner and I have been looking at is how we can go first class, because then I get to where I am, and my system, my human system, is more at peace because I've been able to sleep and relax, and I'm not in a little tiny middle seat. And then I've done that many, many times. And that can sound a lot like privilege. And if you want to say that that's privilege, you're welcome to, because, it's still kind of sorting it out. What I know is I'm an instrument. I trust that I'm really trying to do good in the world. I'm not doing it because I feel like I deserve it. I'm doing it because when I get there, I can work.
Right.
And it's just so much harder on my system. And I know I won't be able to do it for as many years if I have to stay in those little tiny seats, given how much I fly. Now, Courtney, if I flew one time a year for vacation, I'd be like, put me in the middle seat. I don't care, suck it up. But I do this like every month. So money, I'm not in love with money, but that allows me to do that, to actually take care of my system.
Yeah, so I totally understand. I understand the travel. I mean, yeah, Australia, China, that's
my God,
almost the same. The leg, the insomnia, because you can't really, I mean, it's a tight quarters. So I completely understand that. But there was something that you were saying in that I really think that it's what it's all about. It's what I believe our brain wants, because it's what God created us for. I mean, obviously to change the world, but it's to find that peace. And I don't know if you know, but I love studying biblical Hebrew and going back to the original meaning. I've taken 2 trips to Israel.
Amazing.
And, just the breath of the meaning of shalom. It's like total wholeness, complete peace, but it's an action. It's having that and standing in that truth, that it destroys the controlling authority of the chaos in this world. And that
is so beautiful.
Searching for.
Talk about going a layer deeper. So there was a period in my life, my son's father, and I was married to him. I was with him for 18 years, and my grown-up boy, now that's his dad, and he was Jewish. And so I was not raised Jewish, but I lived in that world for a while, which was absolutely fascinating. And wonderful values, and I learned a lot. And one of the things I appreciated was we had a really interesting rabbi. And she did the same thing. She would take and she would say in the original Hebrew, and then in the original Aramaic, and then all of these things that we had interpreted, that have had multiple translations over the years, I'd be like, oh my gosh, that's not at all what I thought that meant, right?
Right.
So talk about going to the layer of deep meaning. And I think that's the piece for me, is understanding the truth and the wisdom and questioning the interpretation. And questioning the interpretation does not mean that you do not have faith. If anything, it means you have more faith if you question this interpretation, because you're looking for what's true and real for you.
Right. And honestly, that's, even though you don't attach like the 7 levels of consciousness and awareness, you don't attach it to God or Jesus per se. Because I mean, I've done the work with you in
Yeah.
Like John Maxwell, he never attaches like the Bible per se to what he teaches in business. It's kingdom principles, and at the end of the day, you can go all the way around the mountain. It's going to lead you back to total truth.
I love that. There's a French theologian, I think he was a Catholic theologian, named Teilhard de Chardin. And he said a couple of really cool things. One of the things that he said is, we are not, you might know this one, we are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience, which I love.
I did not realize that was him.
That's where that came from.
I've heard that in some way, shape, or form before.
That's the original. It's this French theologian, long dead. The other thing that he said was, everything that rises must converge. And so at one point in time, I had a book of beautiful poetry. I think I might still have it on my shelf. And I want to say it's something, I can't remember what it's called, but it's mystical poets, Christian tradition like Saint Teresa. There's Rumi from the Islamic tradition. There's someone from the Jewish tradition. There were all of these different mystical poets, and it's a collection of their poetry. And if you read it, they're basically all saying the same thing. God is love. A deep relationship with God is a partnership of love. It is, faith is love. Faith is what is required. And that at that highest level, and I think, well, that's the place where we're all rising, and truth is truth. There isn't a, Islamic truth that at the most, I'm not saying how it sometimes gets interpreted, or the behavior that it is, saying, well, I'm justified in killing these people because Islam says so. That's not what the purest core truth says. Things get corrupted. But truth is truth. So there can't be like this, one truth that's true for some people and one truth that's true for others. There's got to be some place that, as you say, you go around the mountain and you come back to love.
Yeah.
But a lot of it's gotten corrupted by a lot of people looking not for God, but for power.
A part of this is to live empowered. We are powerful beings. We were created by the ultimate creator, who is so powerful. I mean, by one word.
Mm-hmm.
He spoke a universe into creation. So I can understand that in this fallen state that we're in, there's still that we know, like our DNA knows that power. Created in its image.
What I love about that is, so I'm a poet, as you know, and we talked about that, or you talked about that a little bit, and I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico, so I've got lots of painters around me, and I'm about to go to art class tonight, and I love doing that, and so this comes back to what you said, because there is something that I think about. There's some joy in creation, whatever you are creating. Whatever you are bringing into being that wasn't there before, whether it's a painting or a poem or a baby or just decorating your house really cute, right? I mean, I mean it on that level, crocheting something, writing something, making a podcast. You are creating something that never was here before. And I think that is the place where we touch the divine in us, that capacity that we have to create. And that's why it is so joyful. And what I was saying is, I think if I have any, like, one piece of advice, if you want more joy, it's create something. Just create something. And it doesn't have to be perfect, and it doesn't have to be great. It's just that process of it. It touches something divine, I think, inside of us.
Well, that's so spot on, because actually I was with a coaching client, and like we were doing some work, and perfectionism kept coming up. And okay, so how many times have we read the scripture, be perfect as I am perfect? And we've created this theology that it's the carrot dangling that we're never going to be able to catch. But whenever I really looked at that, if we really think, yes, Jesus was perfect in every way on this earth. But what I really, and this is the CPT, the Courtney Passion Translation of that scripture in Matthew, is, I really feel like the perfect, I mean, we could get into the Greek and Hebrew and all that good stuff, but I really just think it's about, he's the only human being on this earth who was able to be his true, authentic being. I mean, if you think about it, our entire lives is, okay, am I my true, authentic self?
Yeah.
Even to be vulnerable, even before this interview, I was like, okay, Court, I'm like, you're not an entertainer, you're not a performer, like, a whole bunch of crazy crap happened this morning that just really kind of mess with you, like my mind's at. I'm like, Court, just be real. Just be real. But Jesus is the only one that he was his true being. And that's that's our core longing.
Yeah.
I love just that. Be.
What is it to be perfect? It's not a measurement against someone else. It's, again, there's something from the Torah, and I don't remember what rabbi said this, but it's something he said, when I go to heaven, God will not say, why were you not more like Rabbi, Abraham? And God will say, why were you not more like Rabbi Joe? Right? Like, why were you not more you, is what,
yes,
that's the question. Not, were you not more like Jesus? Why were you not more like Anne? And I think, this is where coaching comes in, not about having you to be perfect like someone else, but having you to discover what is that perfection of and uniqueness and amazingness of this being right here. And something I have found, so I think I started my spiritual journey probably when I was about 18 years old, and then became a coach when I was like 36. I'm 55 now, something in there. It's like, it's been almost 20 years at this point. It's been over 15, 2001. So whenever that was. And the process, here's what I've discovered. I keep finding new layers of authenticity. What I thought was authentic 10 years ago was authentic then as much as I could see. And now it's like, oh, let's keep going to the next layer. And I think that is why we're alive. That's what we're doing here. I don't think we just get there at some point. Maybe that's what those, Jesus came having achieved that. The rest of us, that's what our life is about.
Yeah. Like it's not about actually like getting somewhere.
No, he had something to do with that. He had something to show with that. He had a purpose from God with that. So, and he died when he was, how old? 33? Yeah. So, I was barely discovering how to speak up for myself at age 33. Most of us have a long, long journey. And here's what I love about being with people. I don't want to be with people that are perfect, because usually it's not true anyway. Like they might.
There's no such thing as perfect.
There's no such thing.
We're gonna make mistakes,
right? And if they coming across like they're super perfect, they're not. Then that's an even deeper imperfection that is all about appearance or something like that. But what I want is to be people who are in the game. Like they have to be. I love people who say, like my business partner Ursula, and she'd be like, my gosh, I'm totally realizing that I just judge my husband right and left. So like, okay, good. That's something to work on. I would prefer her to say, man, I'm judging you. Like, I'm going to work on that. Be like, okay, good. Let me work on how I'm judging you. Right?
It's something about being just true and authentic about where we are.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's a never-ending journey. And I think this is where having spiritual partners, there's a wonderful, I want to say one thing, there's a wonderful spiritual teacher by the name of Carolyn Myss, M-Y-S-S. And she has a quote. She says, we evolve at the rate of the tribe we're plugged into. So I do think that we rub off on each other. And I want to put myself around other people who have it as their goal to lead an ethical life, to discover what it is to lead a life of faith, who are in that kind of conversation, not people who are just seeking, money and fame and appearance.
I believe that we are all, every single man and woman on this earth are called to change the world. Bring healing to ourselves. Like there has to be an internal revival before we can have a worldwide revival.
I think the first one is we've got to be connected to ourselves. And that is part of knowing, for me, it's like, what's the next lesson that I need to work on? Right? What's the next lesson? How do I be perfect? But what's the next thing I need to authentically engage with? And once that has become more integrated, there'll be another one. I promise you, once you get done with that, life in the world will show you another one, but to keep engaging with that and keep being connected here. And as I think as you were saying, not in a judgmental way, but in a loving, compassionate, one of the things that, I'm sure you've asked your clients and I've asked myself is like, would you talk to your best friend that way, the way that you're talking to yourself right now? Like if you really, right? What would you say if you were your own best friend? No, you wouldn't say half the stuff you say to yourself. And so bringing that into awareness and reprogramming some of those automatic things. Then we have the challenge of being connected to each other and being, one of the things that I talk about is that if I'm with someone, I want to have two qualities. I want to be clear and strong, but also permeable. So I want to, like this clear and strong, it's like, I know what I know. And it's like, I love when you say like, I'm really, I'm studying the Hebrew and I go there. It's like, I am talking to another person who knows who they are and is bringing something. It's just like two strong pillars. And then at the same time, and you also have this beautiful quality, permeable, which means I can be changed by you. I can be impacted by you. I will go out of this conversation with more awareness that I can bring into the next conversation and vice versa. So I love that. That is what I look for and what I want to be. And sometimes I'm better at it than others, but clear about who I am and permeable to other people. And that to me is, and then I also, and then there's the connection with self, connection with other, connection with spirit. And for me, that is, and I know I'm just literally, like this is sort of obvious, but spirit has given me some times recently that I couldn't think my way out of. Those times, Courtney, where it's like, all my fancy training and education and neuroscience training and and all the experience and all of that, no help whatsoever. Because the only thing that's going to get me out of it is faith. And in this past year, I had kind of a tough year, just because of some toxic personalities in my life, which has led me to kind of studying this. But there have been a number of times where I've had to say, I need to surrender. I am surrendering. So I think about this place of being both strong and confident and also in partnership to say, will you help me? I need you to help me. I am, this is bigger than me. And I think some of those times come into every person's life, and it is a blessing to remind us that we are not alone. And it is arrogant. I think that was part of the lesson. It's arrogant for me to think I can just handle everything myself. Oh, and I got this. Because mostly in life, a lot of stuff I kind of figured out. So great, Spirit gave me something I could not get through and I could not figure out without faith. So
Yeah.
the blessing. And what I love is the people that know they're on that, you know, that are like eyes open on that. I mean, I, you know, love other people too, but to me, that's the thing is that like, do you realize that that's the journey you're on? Because you're on it whether you know it or not. You know, we are on our way back to God in any way we can. And I don't know that there's anything else that we're doing here. So might as well do it with eyes open and with help and support and that kind of conversation with other people. Um, so yeah, this was really fun. Thank you.
No,
Um,
thank you. Like I am in total gratitude to you. You know, if anybody wants to get in touch with Ann Betz, you can go to her website, Be Above Leadership. Man, this was such a great, this is girl. It's so
just awesome.
fun.
And I hope I get back to Lafayette soon. I'll have to talk. I am in pretty good contact with Mark and Melissa, and you know, we stay pretty connected. And so hopefully we'll cook something up.
Thank you. Thank you for joining the show. Everyone, thank you for joining us. Until next time, it's just been such an honor and a privilege to share my heart with you and all of the experts' hearts with you. So until next time, thank you for joining Blueprint Reconnection Blueprints. We appreciate you. Have a blessed day.